I never imagined I'd find myself celebrating Easter in the sterile confines of a hospital waiting room, my shirt a Jackson Pollock of wine and blood, a thin crimson trail tracing a path down my temple. Yet, there I sat, thumbing a text to my lawyer. Phase 1. Complete. But let's rewind. Shall we? I'm Nathan Cole, a freshly minted 63. For the past 3 years, I've been luxuriating in retirement after a long career at my accounting firm. My beloved wife, Amelia Grant, succumbed to cancer 5 years ago. Since then, I've rattled around our modest 3-bedroom house in North Vancouver, a home we bought back in '92 for a song, $170,000. Today, it's a prime piece of real estate, pushing close to $2 million. The neighborhood has transformed, a haven for young families and tech wizards, the kind who proudly display their Teslas, plugged into charging stations in their driveways. My son, Logan Pierce, is 32 and doing quite well in pharmaceutical sales. He's married to Charlotte Avery, and they have 2 bright sparks, Hazel Monroe and Mason Reed, ages 8 and 6. They live about an hour away in Langley, depending on the whims of Vancouver traffic, in a nice, cookie-cutter suburban house. I see the grandkids maybe once a month, if I'm lucky. Easter Sunday began unremarkably. Logan called me that Tuesday prior, confirming I was hosting dinner. I always do. It's tradition. Amelia would have wanted it that way, a gathering of family around a table laden with food and memories. That Saturday, I devoted the entire day to culinary preparations. A leg of lamb, lovingly seasoned and destined for roasted perfection, a medley of roasted vegetables glistening with olive oil and herbs, and Amelia's famous hot cross buns, baked from her well-worn recipe card. I even remembered the chocolate Easter eggs for the kids. The house was perfumed with rosemary and garlic, a fragrant reminder of happier times, a bittersweet symphony of past and present. They arrived around 3 p.m. Logan's Tesla silently slid into my driveway. From the kitchen window, I watched them extract the kids from the car. Charlotte was clutching a bottle of wine, one of those fancy, overpriced numbers. She only brings the expensive stuff when she wants something. A lesson I've learned through experience. Dad. Logan came in first, offering a quick, perfunctory hug. More obligation than affection. The house looks great. Thanks, son. Kids, come give Grandpa a hug. Hazel and Mason bounded over, their enthusiasm a welcome contrast to the strained pleasantries. At least the kids were still genuine. They proudly displayed their Easter baskets, regaling me with tales of the egg hunt at their school. Normal grandparent stuff. It felt good, a warm glow in the pit of my stomach. Charlotte kissed my cheek, a touch too heavy on the perfume. Robert, thank you so much for having us. This wine is from the Okanagan, supposed to be exceptional. You didn't have to bring anything. Oh, I insist. She placed it on the counter with a tight smile, the kind that never reaches the eyes. We settled in the living room. I had set the good china in the dining room, but Logan was insistent on chatting first. That should have been my first red flag. Logan never wants to chat. He's perpetually glued to his phone, dissecting quarterly numbers or lamenting about his boss. But today, he was strangely focused, alarmingly present, exchanging glances with Charlotte every few seconds like they were gearing up for a well-rehearsed sales pitch. So, Dad, Logan began, his voice a shade too casual. Charlotte and I have been discussing your living situation. My situation, living here alone, in this big house, is a lot for one person to manage. I smiled, keeping my voice even. I'm doing just fine. The house is paid off, and the maintenance isn't bad. But you're getting older, Charlotte chimed in, perched on the edge of the armchair, leaning forward like a predatory bird. We worry about you. Falls, medical emergencies. What if something happens and no one's here? I have my phone. Neighbors check in. Logan exchanged another loaded look with Charlotte. Here it comes, I thought, the hammer about to drop. We have a proposal, Logan said, his voice oozing with false concern. My in-laws, Charlotte's parents, just retired last month and sold their place in Kamloops. They're looking for a place in the lower mainland, but the market is crazy right now. Congratulations to them. They're good people, Dad. Really active and healthy. Charlotte's mom was a nurse, and her dad taught high school shop class for 30 years. I nodded, waiting for the inevitable. Charlotte jumped in, eager to seal the deal. We were thinking, You have those 2 extra bedrooms just sitting empty? What if my parents moved in? They could help around the house, keep you company, and honestly, it would be cheaper for everyone. They'd pay you rent, of course. You want your parents to move into my house. It's perfect. Charlotte's voice ratcheted up an octave, the enthusiasm bordering on manic. You wouldn't be alone anymore. My mom could help with cooking and cleaning. My dad's handy. He could fix things. And we'd all be closer as a family. I turned to Logan, seeking a flicker of genuine feeling in his eyes. And what do you think about this? I think it makes sense, Dad. Practical. You'd have built-in help. They'd have an affordable place in a great neighborhood. Win-win. The lamb timer chose that moment to bleat from the kitchen. A culinary deus ex machina. Let me check on dinner, I said, rising from my chair. I walked into the kitchen and closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Breathe. Stay calm. This was exactly what Thompson, my lawyer, had predicted. We'd been preparing for this for 6 months. You see, 3 months ago, I received a call from my financial advisor. Someone had attempted to access my investment accounts. They were unsuccessful, but they'd penetrated far enough for the bank to flag the suspicious activity. They had used some of my personal information. My birth date, Amelia's maiden name, my mother's maiden name. The attempt, chillingly, originated from Logan's IP address. I didn't confront him directly. Instead, I called Richard Thompson, the estate lawyer who'd handled Amelia's will. Smart guy. Used to specialize in elder law before transitioning to estates. He instantly recognized the pattern. Robert, he'd said over coffee at a Tim Hortons near his office, I see this scenario every week. Adult children growing impatient about their inheritance. They start probing boundaries, accessing accounts, suggesting convenient living arrangements. Then it invariably escalates. What do? We establish safeguards and meticulously document everything. Over the ensuing 3 months, Thompson orchestrated a series of protective measures. First, we scheduled a comprehensive cognitive assessment with a geriatric specialist, which I aced, providing irrefutable evidence that I was mentally sound, with no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. Second, we updated my will with airtight language and multiple witnesses, leaving no room for ambiguity or legal challenges. Third, we created a living trust with meticulously detailed instructions, ensuring my assets would be managed according to my wishes. Fourth, and this was Thompson's masterstroke, we installed hidden cameras in the living room, dining room, and kitchen. If they're planning something, Thompson explained, they'll reveal it eventually, and when they do, you'll have irrefutable proof. I checked the lamb. Perfect. Golden brown, the thermometer registering the precise temperature. I carved it at the counter, plated the vegetables, arranged the hot cross buns, and summoned them to the table. Dinner started pleasantly enough. The kids chattered about school, the latest playground dramas. I inquired about Logan's work, the ever-fluctuating fortunes of the pharmaceutical industry. Charlotte complimented the food, even offering a genuine smile, all very civilized. Then Logan resurrected the in-laws. So, Dad, about my in-laws. Have you thought about it? I have. I set down my fork, the clatter echoing in the suddenly silent room. I appreciate the concern, but I'm not interested in having roommates. I like my privacy. I like my routine. Charlotte's smile wavered, like a flickering candle in a draft. Roommates? They're family, Robert. They're your family. I've met them twice. But you have all this space? Her voice was growing shriller. 2 empty bedrooms, your own bathroom. What are you even using them for? That's my business. Logan leaned forward, his eyes hardening. Dad, be reasonable. You're 63, living alone. What happens when you're 70? 75? Eventually, you'll need help. Then I'll hire help or move to a retirement community on my terms. Those places cost a fortune. Charlotte actually laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Why spend money on strangers when you could have family here? Because it's my money and my house. Silence descended, thick and suffocating. Hazel looked frightened, her small face pale. Mason, oblivious, was engrossed in devouring his chocolate egg. Kids, I said gently, why don't you two go watch TV in the living room? Find something on Netflix. They scrambled off, grateful for the escape. Smart kids, they sensed the impending storm. Once they were gone, Logan's carefully constructed facade crumbled. "This is unbelievable," he muttered, his voice laced with resentment. "What is your problem? We're trying to help you, and you're acting like we're asking for a kidney." I struggled to maintain my composure, remembering Thompson's advice. "No, that's not selfish. That's a boundary." Charlotte shot to her feet, her face flushed, whether from wine or simmering rage. I couldn't discern. "Do you know what our mortgage payment is? Do you know how much childcare costs? We're drowning, Robert, and you're sitting here in a $2 million house like some feudal lord, hoarding space." "I'm not hoarding anything. I live here." "You live here alone," she was practically shouting now. "Amelia's been gone for 5 years. When are you going to move on and think about someone other than yourself?" That one stung. I'll admit it. But I kept my face impassive, determined not to give her the satisfaction. Logan grabbed Charlotte's arm. "Babe, calm down." She shook him off, her eyes blazing. "No, I'm tired of this. My parents are good people. They raised me. They helped us with the down payment on our house. They babysit whenever we ask. And now they need help, and your father can't even spare 2 empty bedrooms." "No," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Why?" She leaned over the table, her face inches from mine. "Give me one good reason why." "Because I don't want to." Her hand shot out, grabbing the wine bottle. Before I could react, she hurled the contents of her wine glass at my face. Red wine splashed across my forehead, my shirt, the wall behind me, transforming my carefully prepared Easter dinner into a grotesque tableau. The glass itself hit the edge of the table and shattered, a shard catching my eyebrow. I felt a searing pain, followed by a trickle of warmth. Blood. "Charlotte!" Logan jumped up, horrified. I stood slowly, touching my forehead. My fingers came away crimson. I looked at Charlotte. She was breathing heavily, eyes wide and wild, as if she couldn't quite believe what she'd just done. Then I looked at Logan. I said quietly, each word carefully enunciated. "I need to go to the hospital. Dad, I'm so sorry." She didn't mean, yes, she did. And I need medical attention. So, I'm going to drive myself to emergency. You all should leave. I walked past them into the bathroom, grabbed a towel, and pressed it to my head. The cut wasn't deep, but head wounds bleed profusely. I looked at myself in the mirror. Blood, wine, Easter dinner ruined. Perfect. I walked back through the dining room. Charlotte was sobbing now, Logan attempting to comfort her. The kids were still huddled in the living room, transfixed by the television screen. Thank God. "Please leave," I repeated, my voice firm. "Take the kids home?" "Dad, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. Your wife just assaulted me. I need medical care. Please leave my house." I grabbed my keys and walked out, got in my car, and drove towards Lionsgate Hospital. At a red light, I pulled out my phone and texted Thompson. "Phase 1, complete." He responded almost immediately. "On my way to the hospital. Don't talk to Logan. Document everything." The emergency room on Easter Sunday was busy but not chaotic. A nurse took one look at my blood-soaked towel and expedited my triage. While I waited, Thompson materialized, a beacon of calm in the sterile environment. 50-something, graying hair, always impeccably dressed, today sporting his signature brown leather shoes. He assessed my forehead with a practiced eye and shook his head. "Tell me exactly what happened." I recounted the entire dinner. Every word, every nuance, every strained smile I could recall. Thompson diligently took notes on his phone. "They have the kids?" he asked. "Took them home, I assume." "Good. You did the right thing leaving. And the cameras? Should have captured everything." "Robert, I need to ask, do you want to press charges?" I looked at him. This was the pivotal moment. Thompson and I had discussed this scenario extensively. If things escalated to violence, we had options. Assault charges, restraining orders, but it would irrevocably shatter the family. "Yes," I said, my voice unwavering. "I want to press charges." Thompson nodded, his expression grimly satisfied. "I'll call the RCMP." Within the hour, 2 officers arrived, a male constable and a female sergeant. Professional, polite, they took my statement, photographed my injury, and collected the wine-stained shirt as evidence. They inquired about my safety at home. "I do," I said. "But I want a restraining order against my daughter-in-law." The female sergeant nodded. We'll file the assault charge first. Assault with a weapon, in this case, the wine glass and its contents. Given your age, there may be additional considerations under elder abuse statutes. Elder abuse? You're over 60, she's a family member. B. C. Law takes that very seriously. They departed to file the paperwork. A doctor finally attended to me, cleaning the cut, applying liquid stitches, a minor injury, no concussion. I was discharged around 8 p.m. Thompson drove me home. My house was dark, eerily silent. I half expected Logan to be lurking on the porch, but it was deserted. Thompson followed me inside. "Let's check the footage," he said. We went to my office. I brought up the security system on my computer. 4 camera angles: living room, dining room, kitchen, front entry. We watched the entire scene unfold. Charlotte's escalating rage was undeniable, her violent act captured in stark detail. Logan's feeble attempts to restrain her. My calm, deliberate exit. "This is gold," Thompson said, his voice laced with grim satisfaction. "Clear video, clear audio, and unprovoked assault. The fact that you remained calm and left makes you appear perfectly reasonable. She looks unhinged. What happens now?" "The RCMP will investigate. They'll interview Logan and Charlotte, probably tonight or tomorrow morning. Charlotte will be formally charged. She'll have to appear in court. You'll need to obtain a peace bond or restraining order, which should be straightforward given the overwhelming evidence. And Logan," Thompson hesitated, his brow furrowed. "That's more complicated. He didn't physically assault you, but we need to address the larger issue, the attempted account access." "Exactly. I suspect they were planning something more extensive, targeting this house, my assets, the suggestion about her parents moving in. A classic setup. Get them into the house, establish residency, then claim I'm incapable of living independently, push for power of attorney, perhaps even guardianship." My stomach churned at the thought. "You really think Logan would do that?" "I believe Charlotte is capable of it, and I fear Logan is weak enough to be swayed." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the accusations hanging heavy in the air. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We go on the offensive. Tomorrow, I'll file a formal complaint with your bank and the police regarding the attempted account access. Financial exploitation of an elderly person is a serious crime in B. C. We also need to reinforce your estate documents. Make it unequivocally clear that Logan receives nothing if he contests the will or initiates any legal maneuvers." "What about the grandkids?" Thompson's expression softened. "We can establish education trusts for them, separate from Logan's inheritance, managed by an independent trustee. They'll receive the funds when they turn 25, regardless of their parents' actions." That felt right. A way to shield the innocent from the consequences of their parents' choices. Thompson left around 10 p.m. I sat alone in my living room, a bandage clinging to my forehead, dried wine staining my collar. The Easter decorations suddenly appeared absurd. The pastel eggs and spring flowers, a mocking reminder of a resurrection that would never be. My phone buzzed. "Logan." I ignored it. It buzzed again. Voicemail. Then a text. "Dad, please call me. Charlotte feels terrible. We need to talk." I powered off my phone, severing the connection. The next day, Monday, the police called. Charlotte had been formally charged with assault. She was released on conditions: no contact with me, surrender of her passport, and a promise to appear in court. Logan called Thompson's office 16 times. Thompson didn't answer. Tuesday, Thompson filed the financial exploitation complaint. The bank temporarily froze my accounts while they investigated the attempted access, requiring me to prove my own innocence. Thankfully, I had been at a dentist appointment during the exact time of the attempt, with records to verify my alibi. Wednesday, the RCMP interviewed Logan. According to Thompson's contact within the department, Logan admitted he'd attempted to access my accounts, claiming he was merely checking on his father's financial health, expressing concern about cognitive decline. That phrase, cognitive decline, sent a shiver down my spine. Thursday, Thompson and I met with a judge to request a restraining order. We presented the video evidence, the assault charge, the attempted account access. The judge granted the order immediately. Charlotte was prohibited from approaching within 100 meters of me and my property. Logan, technically, could visit, but only with 48 hours written notice and only during daylight hours. Friday, My doorbell rang. I checked the camera monitor. Logan, alone. I opened the door, but did not invite him in. He looked haggard, unshaven, dark circles etched beneath his eyes. Dad, please, can we talk? Your 48-hour notice period hasn't elapsed. I am your son, and I have a restraining order against your wife for assaulting me. The conditions are explicitly clear. She's sorry. She was stressed. She drank too much. She didn't mean, yes, she meant it, and you stood there and allowed it to happen. He flinched, the truth hitting home. I tried to stop her. Not hard enough. Logan, do you understand the gravity of what you two were doing? We were trying to help. You attempted to access my bank accounts without my permission. You pushed your in-laws into my home. You labeled me selfish for wanting privacy in my own house. That is not help. That is control. You're paranoid. I retrieved my phone and displayed a document. The cognitive assessment results, perfect scores across the board, a recent date stamp. I am not paranoid. I am competent, and I am done. His face crumpled, his carefully constructed composure shattered. What does that mean? It means I have updated my will. You are still included, but only if you respect my boundaries. Any attempt to contest it, to claim I am incompetent, to manipulate my finances, you receive nothing. There is an education trust for Hazel and Mason. They will be secure. But you and Charlotte must navigate your own lives. You would really cut me off? You discarded me first, at Easter dinner, for 2 empty bedrooms. He stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a stranded fish. Finally, Charlotte's parents forfeited their deposit on a rental because of this. We were relying on living here, and there it was, the unvarnished truth. You were relying on living here, I repeated, each word laced with disgust. Not her parents. You. He offered no denial. Get off my property, Logan. Dad, 48 hours notice. In writing, through Thompson's office. Those are the terms. Abide by them, or I will summon the police. I closed the door, severing the connection. Through the window, I watched him stand there for 3 minutes, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Then he entered his Tesla and silently drove away. That was 6 months ago. Charlotte's assault case proceeded to court. She pleaded guilty, receiving a conditional discharge with probation and court-mandated anger management counseling. The elder abuse aspect was acknowledged but not separately prosecuted. Her lawyer argued it was an isolated incident, triggered by stress, an aberration from her normal character. The judge remained unconvinced but ultimately accepted the plea. Charlotte received 2 years probation. The financial exploitation investigation proved more protracted. Eventually, the RCMP concluded that it was an attempted fraud, but declined to pursue criminal charges. Given Logan's familial relationship and the fact that he never actually gained access to any funds, only attempted to do so. The bank permanently flagged his information in my account security. He can never access it now. Logan has sent me letters, 5 in total, over the past 6 months, apologizing profusely, explaining their dire financial straits. His job was precarious. Charlotte's maternity leave had ended, and childcare expenses were crippling them. Her parents genuinely had intended to help. It all sounded so reasonable on paper, so carefully constructed. But I remembered his face when he uttered those words. Cognitive decline. I remembered the attempted access, the pressure, the unwavering sense of entitlement. I have not responded to any of the letters. Last week, I booked a 3-week trip to Scotland, a journey that has long been deferred. Edinburgh, the Highlands, the Isle of Skye. Amelia always yearned to visit. We never managed to before she fell ill. I am embarking on this adventure alone, and I am at peace with that. The house feels different now. Not desolate, but serene. I have joined a book club at the community center, engaging my mind in new and stimulating ways. I have even begun taking watercolor classes, discovering a latent artistic talent. I have also met a widow named Evelyn Hart, whose infectious laughter fills my days with unexpected joy. We often meet for coffee, sharing stories and finding solace in each other's company. My financial advisor assures me that my investments are thriving. The house continues to appreciate, its value steadily increasing. I am comfortable, secure, safe. Hazel sent me a drawing last week. It appeared in my mailbox, a colorful burst of childlike affection. No return address, but I recognized her distinctive handwriting on the envelope. A picture of me, her, and Mason at a park, surrounded by hearts. "I miss you, Grandpa," scrawled in crayon. I wept for an hour, allowing myself to grieve the loss of what could have been. But I did not call Logan, because that is what he desires. He wants the grandchildren to be the wedge, the emotional leverage, and I cannot permit that to happen. Thompson advises that when Hazel turns 18, she can reach out on her own terms. We will meet for coffee, and I will explain everything. She will comprehend, or she will not. That is a decade away, a lifetime in the making. I am 63 years old. I may have 30 more years ahead of me. I may have only 3. But however long I have remaining, I am determined to live it on my own terms, in my own house, with my boundaries firmly intact. Sometimes, family signifies the individuals who love you unconditionally, embracing you for who you are, flaws and all. Sometimes, it signifies the individuals who feign love, offering it conditionally, only if you capitulate to their demands and relinquish what is rightfully yours. I chose myself after years of prioritizing everyone else. I finally chose myself, and you know what? I sleep soundly at night. The house is quiet, a sanctuary of peace. The doors are securely locked. The cameras are diligently recording, and every morning, I awaken in my own bed, in my own house, living my own life. That is not selfish. That is survival. If you find yourself embroiled in a similar situation, wrestling with family pressures, with adult children who erroneously believe they are entitled to your home, your money, your life, document everything meticulously. Enlist the services of a reputable lawyer, someone well-versed in elder law. Engage in those difficult, uncomfortable conversations. Clearly define your boundaries, and never, ever feel guilty for protecting yourself, even from your own blood, especially from your own blood. Because at the end of the day, you do not owe anyone your peace. Not even family, perhaps especially not family. He extended his hand, a gesture of finality and agreement. "We'll call you 8 hours before the finalization, Mr. Morrison." I left through the main lobby, walked back to the parking garage, the rain having subsided, a faint glimmer of sunlight breaking through the clouds. Only when I was safely seated alone in the Subaru, away from prying eyes, did I allow the accumulated tension to finally release. 4 long weeks until Eric would discover that his father-in-law wasn't the powerless, diminished retiree he so readily dismissed. 4 weeks until the truth would finally be revealed, shattering his carefully constructed illusion. The phone rang at precisely 10 to 12 the following Thursday morning. Gregory Thornhill's voice, smooth and professional, filled my ear. "Mr. Morrison, your account transfer is now complete. When would you prefer to finalize the necessary paperwork?" I glanced at the clock on the wall, my pulse quickening slightly. "I'll be there within the hour." "Excellent, Mr. Morrison. Everything will be prepared for your review." After hanging up the phone, I moved deliberately through my final preparations, removing my decent, everyday watch and replacing it with a cheap, digital one I had purchased years ago. I carefully selected my oldest, most faded jeans, a worn and patched work jacket, scuffed and well-worn boots. I studied my reflection critically in the mirror, ensuring I presented the perfect image of a modest, unassuming retiree, the antithesis of Eric Dunham's carefully cultivated image of success. The drive to downtown Toronto took approximately 40 minutes. The traffic surprisingly light. I pulled the Subaru into the visitor parking garage, no longer bothering to conceal my presence, no longer attempting to hide in the shadows. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls of the lobby, I spotted Eric near the conference room, engaged in an animated conversation with a group of clients, his back to the entrance. I entered the building, walked past the receptionist without pausing, and headed towards the bank of elevators. Eric, glancing over his shoulder, caught sight of me, did a double take, his expression shifting rapidly from initial confusion to irritation, and finally to undisguised embarrassment. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the 23rd floor, and waited as the doors silently closed. When the doors reopened, I walked with deliberate purpose directly to Thornhill's private office. The glass-walled conference room, strategically located near the elevators, was clearly visible to the entire floor, offering an unobstructed view of everything transpiring within. Thornhill stood as I entered, extending his hand in greeting. "Mr. Morrison, right on time. Please, let's finalize everything." He led me into the conference room, his movements brisk and efficient, Eric, drawn by the commotion, had followed me, his face a mask of growing confusion and unease. Thornhill spread the documents across the large conference table, smoothing them with his hand. $15 million portfolio transfer, all documentation has been meticulously prepared. If you could just review and sign here? Eric's face drained of color, his eyes wide with disbelief. Thornhill continued, addressing me directly but speaking loudly enough to ensure that Eric could clearly hear every word. Your account will be managed at our platinum tier, Mr. Morrison, with direct access to senior partnership and quarterly reviews, ensuring that your investment goals are always our top priority. I began signing the documents, my hand steady, my signature precise. Eric stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. Evan, what are you doing here? I looked up, adopting an expression of studied neutrality. Finalizing my portfolio transfer. You're what? Eric stammered, his composure crumbling. Thornhill intervened smoothly, his voice cold and professional. Mr. Morrison is in the process of transferring $15 million to our management, Mr. Dunham, one of our most substantial new clients this quarter. Eric's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came out. Other staff members, drawn by the unusual scene, were now openly watching. $15 million? Eric's voice came out strangled, barely audible. You don't have $15 million, Evan? You live in a one-bedroom apartment. You drive a Subaru. I do live in a one-bedroom apartment, I said calmly, maintaining eye contact. And I do drive a Subaru. However, neither of those facts has any bearing whatsoever on my net worth. Thornhill's expression suggested he was finally piecing together the complex family dynamics at play, the web of deception and misjudgment. Mr. Patterson, perhaps we should discuss this matter privately. But Eric was no longer listening, his gaze fixed on me, his face contorted with disbelief and anger. His voice rose, trembling with indignation. This is impossible. You used to work at a mill, for God's sake. You're retired. You're on a fixed income. I own the mill, I corrected him quietly, and I sold it 18 months ago for $31 million. The entire office had fallen into complete silence, every eye fixed on our unfolding drama. Eric spun around abruptly, facing Thornhill, his face a mask of desperation. There must be some mistake. This is my father-in-law. He's one of our most valued new clients, Mr. Dunham, Thornhill finished coldly. And you're currently disrupting a highly confidential account finalization. I continued signing the documents, my hands still steady, my movements deliberate and unhurried. Eric's face cycled through a kaleidoscope of emotions, from disbelief to outrage, to a dawning realization of the catastrophic consequences of his actions. Evan, we should talk. Family should discuss these things. Maybe I could help you manage it. No, I said simply, my voice firm and unwavering. But I'm family, Evan. I could advise you. I could protect your investments. You've already given me plenty of advice, Eric, I retorted, the sarcasm dripping from my voice. About my apartment, my car, my supposed fixed income. I don't require any additional guidance from you, thank you very much. Thornhill's jaw tightened visibly, his patience clearly wearing thin. Eric tried a different tack, his voice softening, almost pleading. The children, Kayla, we could really use. I set down the pen, looked directly at him, my eyes hard. The children need winter coats, Eric. Kayla needs a husband who doesn't spend $95,000 on a car while his daughter's shoes have holes in them. Those things would be far more useful than your unsolicited financial advice. Someone in the office coughed nervously, breaking the suffocating silence. Eric's face flushed a deep, angry red. You have no right, he hissed, his voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. I have every right, Eric, I said quietly, but with steel in my voice. I'm their grandfather, and I'm done watching you prioritize your own ego and your insatiable need for status over their basic needs. I turned to Thornhill, ignoring Eric completely. Are we finished here, Mr. Thornhill? Just one more signature. Mr. Morrison. He slid the final document across the table. I signed it, dated it, and pushed it back towards him. Thornhill gathered the signed papers, his expression unreadable. Welcome to Thornhill Capital, Mr. Morrison. We'll schedule your first quarterly review for March. He stood, extended his hand, a formality. We shook. Then, Thornhill turned to Eric, his voice icy. Mr. Patterson, your employment with Thornhill Capital is terminated, effective immediately. HR will contact you regarding your final paycheck. Eric's face registered a look of pure horror, a complete and utter devastation. I gathered my portfolio and walked deliberately towards the elevator, leaving the wreckage behind me. Behind me, I heard Thornhill's voice, cold and unforgiving. Mr. Dunham, my office. Now, the elevator doors closed, mercifully obscuring Eric's stricken face from view. From the parking garage, I sat alone in the Subaru for 3 minutes, slowly processing everything that had just transpired, replaying the scene in my mind, reliving the confrontation. Then, I started the engine and drove to Kayla's house. The ostentatious Mercedes still sat in the driveway, a monument to misplaced priorities. Kayla answered the door, looking confused. Dad, what are you doing here? It's Thursday afternoon. We need to talk, sweetheart. Can I come in? She stepped aside silently, allowing me to enter. I walked directly to the kitchen table, sat down heavily. Eric will be home soon. He got a call from work. Sounded upset. I know, Kayla. Sit down. She sat slowly, her eyes searching my face, trying to decipher the meaning behind my unexpected visit. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo gallery, and turned the screen towards her. The first image showed Eric and Melissa at an intimate outdoor cafe, his hand possessively covering hers. Kayla stared at the image, her face remaining still, almost blank. I swiped to the next photo. Another restaurant, another cozy setting, Eric's arm draped casually around Melissa's shoulders. How long? Her voice was barely audible, a mere whisper. About 6 months, Kayla. That's Jenna Morales. She works at his firm. I swiped again. The entrance to a luxury hotel. The timestamp was clearly visible. Kayla's hands began to tremble, her composure finally cracking. She pulled the phone closer, swiped through the remaining images, her breath catching in her throat. I hired an investigator, Kayla. I'm sorry, but I had to know. The documents revealed that he had taken out $75,000 in loans and credit card charges without her consent. I emphasized that the family's total debt amounted to $420,000 and that he had been spending money on another woman while denying the children new coats. Kayla Bennett stared intently at the documents, which displayed unfamiliar numbers, dates, and accounts. Continuing, I mentioned that earlier that morning, I had transferred $15 million to Thornhill Capital, an act that led to Eric Dunham's dismissal after he witnessed the finalization of the paperwork in front of his colleagues. Her head snapped up in disbelief. I clarified that his actions were the cause of his termination. I merely ceased to maintain the facade he had created. I disclosed that I had been wealthy all along, having sold my business 18 months prior for $31 million and had chosen to live modestly. Eric Dunham had jumped to conclusions, and I allowed him to do so. Kayla Bennett's face crumpled with emotion. I explained that I had allowed them to believe I was struggling and had let him mock me because I needed to understand his true character and the person she had become with him, and I wanted her to see it as well. She abruptly stood and began pacing the kitchen, overwhelmed by the revelation. As the front door opened, Eric Dunham appeared carrying a cardboard box, his tie loosened and his face flushed. Upon seeing me, he stopped, his voice trembling as he accused me of ruining his career. I calmly responded that he was responsible for his own downfall. I had only set the stage. He then turned to Kayla Bennett, demanding to know if I had told her what he had done. She quietly replied that I had shown her the photographs of him with Melissa. Eric Dunham paled, attempting to explain that the images were taken out of context. Kayla Bennett stated that for 6 months, while they couldn't afford coats for the children, and while he purchased a $95,000 car. I can explain. Get out, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Eric Dunham stared at her, bewildered. This is my house. It's our house, Eric, and I want you to leave now. He looked from me back to Kayla Bennett, his eyes pleading. You're choosing him over me? After what he did, I'm choosing truth over lies. I'm choosing my children over your ego. Leave, Eric. Eric Dunham stood frozen, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. He then grabbed his car keys from the counter and walked out without another word. The Mercedes roared to life in the driveway, reversed too fast, and sped away down the street, disappearing into the distance. Kayla Bennett sank into a chair, put her face in her hands, and began to sob uncontrollably. I moved around the table, put my hand on her shoulder, offering comfort, offering support. I know this hurts, sweetheart, but you and the children will be okay. I promise. She looked up, her face streaked with tears, her eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. How, Dad? How will we be okay? Because you're stronger. Her eyes, they held a depth of emotion I couldn't quite decipher. The clock ticked on, each second a heavy beat in the silence. The children will be home from school in an hour, I said, the words feeling inadequate. What do you want to tell them? The unvarnished truth, raw and painful? Or a version softened by compassion? A narrative they can grasp? That their dad made some bad choices, lost his way. That Grandpa's here, helping us pick up the pieces, navigate this storm. That sounds right, she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. She turned to me then, her gaze searching, probing. Really, she breathed, her eyes widening slightly. You really have $31 million? I do. And you've been living in that tiny apartment? By choice? After your mother died, I realized. Stuff doesn't matter much, Kayla. Not in the grand scheme of things. People do. Making a difference, leaving a positive mark, that's what gives life meaning. The money's just a tool, a means to an end, not the end itself. I don't know how to feel about any of this, she confessed, her voice laced with confusion. That's okay. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just know that you're not alone. You have me. 6 weeks later, the sterile environment of the Milton family courtroom felt heavy with anticipation. Kayla Bennett sat at the plaintiff's table, a picture of quiet strength, with her legal representative, the sharp and composed Amanda Chen. Across the aisle, Eric Dunham sat awkwardly in a borrowed suit, looking every bit the disgraced man he was. Beside him sat a court-appointed representative, a stark reminder of his financial ruin. He had attempted to hire legal counsel, but the funds simply weren't there. The divorce proceedings had moved with surprising speed, the weight of the evidence proving insurmountable. Adultery, a labyrinth of financial deceit, and a mountain of concealed debt. Judge Morrison, a woman known for her no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the documents with a practiced eye. This is remarkably straightforward, given the circumstances, she stated, her voice resonating in the hushed courtroom. Amanda Chen rose to her feet, her voice clear and confident. Your Honor, my client seeks primary custody of the children, child support proportional to the respondent's current income, and an equitable division of assets, specifically excluding the respondent's undisclosed debts, which were incurred without my client's knowledge or consent. Eric Dunham's representative, a young man visibly out of his depth, stood hesitantly. Your Honor, my client requests shared custody of the children and disputes the proposed asset division. Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow, her expression skeptical. On what grounds? My client believes external influence from the maternal grandfather has unfairly swayed the proceedings, poisoning the well, so to speak. Stop, Judge Morrison commanded, holding up a hand. Unless you can demonstrate that Mr. Dan, Evan Mitchell Grant Lawson's financial support directly constitutes marital property. His involvement, or lack thereof, is irrelevant to these proceedings. I suggest you focus on the facts at hand. She reviewed the documents again, her gaze unwavering. Primary custody to petitioner Kayla Bennett Patterson. Respondent granted standard visitation rights, as outlined in the agreed-upon schedule. Child support set at $1,800 monthly, based on the respondent's current, verifiable income. Marital home, awarded to the petitioner, free and clear of any encumbrances. Respondent's separate debts remain his sole responsibility. The gavel fell, its sharp rap echoing through the room, signaling the end of a chapter. Outside the courthouse, Kayla Bennett stood bathed in the pale December sunlight. It was the first time I'd seen her truly smile in what felt like an eternity. It's over, she said, a sense of relief washing over her. The legal part is, the rest, that takes time. Thank you, Dad, for everything. You made this possible. You did this, sweetheart. You made the hard choice to walk away, to protect yourself and your children. I just provided some information, shed some light on the situation. She hugged me properly then. A genuine embrace, Not the quick, obligatory hugs of recent months. It was a hug that spoke volumes, a hug filled with gratitude and love. 3 months later, I found myself at Kayla Bennett's house, assisting Noah Carter with his math homework at the kitchen table. Lily Parker sat nearby, engrossed in a science project involving baking soda and vinegar. The atmosphere in the house had undergone a transformation. It felt brighter, lighter, infused with a newfound sense of peace. Kayla Bennett had rearranged the furniture, painted the walls in warm, inviting colors, and truly made it her own. She had secured a position at an environmental consulting firm, finally putting her degree to use and building the career she had put aside for so long. The children were sporting new winter coats and proper boots, not because I had purchased them out of pity, but because Kayla Bennett had, using her own hard-earned money, taking pride in every purchase, every decision she made for her family. "Grandpa," Noah Carter said, his brow furrowed in concentration, "can you explain this math problem? It's got me stumped." "Let's look at it together," I replied, pulling the worksheet closer. We worked through it, not doing it for him, but guiding him, offering gentle nudges, until he arrived at the answer himself. The look of satisfaction on his face was priceless. Kayla Bennett came home at 5:30, a tired but happy smile gracing her lips as she took in the scene at the table. "How was work?" I asked. "Good. Really good," she replied, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "I'm working on a watershed restoration project, putting my degree to use finally. It feels amazing." "That's wonderful, Kayla. I'm so proud of you." After dinner, after the children had retreated to their rooms to play, Kayla Bennett and I sat at the table with steaming mugs of tea. The silence was comfortable, companionable. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice thoughtful, "about everything that happened. The lies, the betrayal. Part of me wishes you'd told me sooner. About the money, about what you knew all along. I understand that, but another part understands why you didn't. I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have defended him, made excuses, told you it was fine, that it wasn't that bad. Maybe," she conceded with a sigh. "Dad, did you ever worry you went too far, setting up that whole thing at his office? The sting operation, the public humiliation?" I considered the question carefully, weighing my words. "Yes. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled it differently, found a more subtle approach. But Eric Dunham needed to face consequences publicly. A private confrontation wouldn't have changed his behavior. It would have just allowed him to continue his charade. It was humiliating for him, no doubt. It was. And that troubles me. But Kayla Bennett, he was humiliating you privately every day, chipping away at your confidence, making you feel small, making you question your worth. Sometimes breaking one person's pride is necessary to restore another person's dignity." She nodded slowly, absorbing my words. "I've been thinking about Mom, what she would have said about all this. Your mother would have been proud of you for leaving, for rebuilding your life, for protecting her grandchildren. She never tolerated disrespect of any kind. She would have hit him with a frying pan. Probably," I added with a wry smile. We both laughed then, a genuine, heartfelt laugh. The first real laugh I'd heard from her in years. "The children seem happier," I observed, watching them through the doorway as they played. "They are. It's strange. They miss Eric Dunham, but they're lighter, less tense. They don't walk on eggshells anymore. They can just be kids." "That's good, Kayla. That's really good. Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "The $15 million at Thornhill Capital, is that real, or was it just for show, part of the act?" "It's real. Properly invested, diversified portfolio, quarterly reviews. Why keep it there? Why not move it after everything, after what he did?" "Because Gregory Thornhill runs a good firm, and they've consistently delivered solid returns. And because Eric Dunham no longer works there to feel uncomfortable, why let his mistakes dictate my financial decisions? I'm not going to cut off my nose to spite my face." She smiled, a knowing smile. "That's very practical of you, Dad. I'm a practical man, Kayla. Always have been." Later, driving home to Burlington, I reflected on the past 4 months. The investigation, the confrontation, the divorce, and the rebuilding. Had I overstepped? Perhaps. Could I have managed things more delicately? Possibly. But Kayla Bennett had gained her freedom. a freedom long overdue. The children were well cared for, thriving in a stable and loving environment, and Eric Dunham was finally dealing with the ramifications of his actions, facing the consequences of his choices. Sometimes justice can resemble revenge, and sometimes it is revenge, plain and simple. The distinction lies in the intention, the underlying motivation. My aim was protection. My method was exposure. I could accept that. I could live with that. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and reviewed my account balance, which showed over $28 million and continuing to grow through investments. It was more money than I would ever need, more than I ever imagined having. I created a new document titled Education Trust Fund, Noah Carter and Lily Parker Grant Lawson, and started to research trust structures, tax implications, and eligible educational expenses. The money wasn't the ultimate goal, but it was a valuable tool, a means to secure their future, to provide them with opportunities I never had, and I intended to use it wisely to make a lasting impact on their lives. Before going to bed, I received a text message from Kayla Bennett. "Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I probably deserved it. I love you, Dad." I replied, "I love you too, sweetheart. Always." Then I set the phone down, a sense of contentment washing over me. Justice served, family restored, future secured, task complete. A quiet smile played on my lips as I drifted off to sleep. End of story.